Hi, I'm Laura Brennan, and today I'm going to show you how you can start growing plants indoors using seed trays. There's so many reasons why I like to start growing seeds in trays. First, you can get a head start of the growing season. Sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too cold. Another really good reason is so that way you can grow different varieties of seeds. Sometimes there are a limited selection of plants in the nurseries. You can put 1 or 2 seeds into the seed tray rather than just putting all of them in the ground. Not all of them are going to come up, so you have the benefit of having a better chance of germination rate in the trays. The soil mixture I'm using here is something light. I have here some coco coir, compost, and vermiculite. So I'm going to transfer the soil into the seed tray. And you want to do this nice and evenly. You want to tap it down to get rid of the air pockets, so that way you make sure that all of the seed mixture is going into the seed tray. I like to prepare my labels ahead of time and put them in the seed tray, so that way I know exactly where the seeds that I'm planting are going. And after you do that, I like to write it inside my garden journal, just to make sure that I remember what seeds I planted and what day, and if they germinated or not. So now we're going to talk about the different kinds of seeds. I have here 2 common seeds that I like to start in trays. One of them is Cosmos and the other is Thai basil. I'm a cut flower gardener, so I like to use basil in my arrangements. Some of them are very tiny and some of them are pretty large. Cosmos seeds are a good size, and I like to use my pencil to make pre-holes inside of the seed trays. Sometimes the seeds are very tiny, like snapdragons. Those are very small, and so I just like to just sprinkle a few on the top and then push them in. But for Cosmos seeds, these are a good size, so I'm gonna just pop them inside, 1 seed at a time for each seed tray. You can kind of just, with your finger, push them in. And once you have them all filled in, you're going to want to kind of mist it, so that way it's all moisturized. Check on your seeds first thing in the morning. Are they still wet? Are they drying up? I do a little finger test. I kind of put my finger inside to see if it needs more moisture. I have a mister that I like to mist in the mornings. So something that you want to keep in mind when you have light is that it needs to be as close as to the seeds as you can, so that way as they grow, you can move the light up, so that way they're not stretching out or getting too leggy. The goal is to get them in the garden. So once plants are about 2 inches high, the first leaves, the second leaves, that's when you can take them out. And I use a knife to kind of get them out, shake all of the excess soil, and then you want to put them in the garden. Or if you have extras, then you can pot them up into a 4-inch. Here they can get nice and big and bushy. I don't like to keep them in 4 inches for too long, because sometimes they get stunted and they just want to be in the garden, so you want to get them in the garden as soon as you can. For Backyard Basics, I'm Laura Brennan.